Several reports earlier this month stated that the Giants intend to cut payroll going into next season. They also finished 80 and 82. So how do they want to, or how are they going to improve while spending less?
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show since just before the 2019 season, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. You can start the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where we get started is by jumping into some more mailbag questions. Thank you again to everyone who submitted questions. These are now 2 weeks old, but not a lot has happened since we asked for them, and there's a lot remaining, and they're all still relevant. So let's just jump right in. Purple Drank asks, how do the Giants plan to improve their 500 team while also cutting payroll by 20%? There's no indication, first of all, that there's a specific number. Any reporting I've seen, there was no 20%. So I don't know where exactly you're getting that, but definitely there were reports that they intend to cut payroll. I think possibly you're referencing where their luxury tax payroll was, and then you're saying if they get under the luxury tax, which would seem to be the goal, then that would be 20%. I don't know. I haven't done that math, but maybe you're accurate in that, just for everyone else listening. But definitely, we have read that they have intended to cut payroll. And yet, yeah, I mean, like you're saying, they want to cut payroll, but they also want to improve, one would assume, upon their 80 and 82 record. So you're actually doing them a favor, calling them a 500 team. They were, 2 games below 500, 1 win below 500 when all was said and done. And so it's a totally valid and fair and legitimate question. And the first place I'm going to go is I'm going to look at some of the expenditures they had last season that are no longer on the books. You've got Blake Snell, $32 million. I don't know exactly what of that went, because he had like a signing bonus and they still owe him a big chunk of that signing bonus, I believe, this year. And then you did have Michael Conforto making $18 million, and that was kind of, I don't want to call it dead weight, but he wasn't contributing enough to justify an $18 million salary. So we'll get into what I mean by that. Mark Canha, they acquired mid-season, and he was on an $11.5 million salary. And let's see, Wilmer Flores was making $6.5 million, and he will be making less this year, $3.5 million, and yeah, not much else beyond that. In terms of free agents, Kurt Casale was making a, possibly even league minimum salary when he was on the team. So also Jung-Hoo Lee, by the way, was only making like $8 million this year, although he was hurt all year, and that jumps up, it basically doubles to closer to $17 million in 2025. And so when we look at the projected team in 2025 and their guaranteed commitments, a big day is tomorrow. when it's the deadline to tender contracts to arbitration eligible players, and the Giants have 5 of them: Mike Yastrzemski, Lamont Wade Jr., Tyler Rogers, Camilo Doval, and Austin Warren. And very relevant is the number that they're projected to receive if they go through with the arbitration process. So there's no promise at all that these salaries are determined tomorrow. It's just a matter of, do you tender a contract or not? And as a team and as outside observers, we know that if that player is tendered a contract, they'll end up making roughly these amounts. And for Yaz, it's $9.5 million. For Wade, it's 4.7. These are estimates via MLB Trade Rumors. They've been kind of refining they do a good job of estimating arbitration salaries. And for Tyler Rogers, it's 5.5 million, and for Camilo Doval, 4.6. So a lot of the salaries have to do with where you are in arbitration. Mike Yastrzemski was a Super 2, meaning he got 4 years of arbitration, which is kind of why that salary, it's going to make you earn more ultimately, because you get 4 years to build it up. It increases every year, versus guys who only get 3 years of arbitration, which is the norm. Only the top 22% of players in terms of service time every year are awarded a 4th year of arbitration. It's called a Super 2. They're in their 2nd year of service time, but they're in the top 22% of that 2nd year of service time. So anyway, you're losing dead weight in Michael Conforto. So you're clearing $18 million that, you could just like wipe him out. And then there's I don't know if that's exactly 20%. It's not. I don't think that 20% number is accurate. The final, I don't want to say the luxury tax payroll. I just want to look at the non-luxury tax payroll was $206 million. And so 20% of that would be $41.2 million. So if we take 206 and subtract that, it's 165. So you would be assuming that basically they'd only have a payroll of 165 million from 206. And I think that it will be more than that. I don't anticipate that much of a decline in their 2025 payroll from 2024. So I don't know, more like maybe 10%. I don't know exactly. But so that's one point to make, is that I don't think it's 20%. The second point to make is just smarter spending, and also possibly acquiring players who are cheaper, possibly via trade. Because if you're signing a free agent, you're paying, by definition, top dollar for that player. You're paying market value. But if you're trading for players, you potentially get them in their pre-arbitration years, or arbitration years, and that those salaries are by definition suppressed versus market value. Pre-arbitration players are making less than $1 million a year, and then in arbitration it depends. Like I said, there's 3 or 4 years of arbitration, and you start off at a lower number and work your way up as the years go on. And so you could acquire, but the cheaper a player is relative to how good they are, the more they're going to cost in a trade. So if you're a superstar making the league minimum, that's like the most valuable commodity out there. So it's not easy to improve your team while reducing payroll when you were an 80-win team in 2024. So I'm not super confident that they will, but I'll let the offseason play out and see what they do. If you could end up with a Roki Sasaki, for example, though, like, he is not eligible to receive a free agent contract. He's only going to get international signing pool money, and that's capped at like 5 or 6 million. So he's not going to get a lot of money. And then he's going to be on a rookie pre-arbitration contract. just like Shohei Ohtani when he went to the Angels. They didn't pay him some huge amount of money. They were paying him a league minimum salary for 3 years and then arbitration for 3 years, just like any other normal rookie. And that's going to be the case for Roki Sasaki, who's potentially an ace coming out of Japan. So, players like that would go a long way to how do you improve the team without or while reducing payroll. But just smart spending, it's not to say they can't sign a really good free agent or two. And because like I said, they're I don't think I actually maybe didn't say this, but they're currently projected at about 155 million. But like I said, they have decisions to make on players like Mike Yastrzemski. And Yastrzemski, for what it's worth, I think something that could make sense, and he expressed a willingness to potentially do this, is to maybe you spread that $9.5 million out because it's a little high, but he wants to stay with the Giants. So maybe you offer him a 2-year deal that is worth like $10 million over 2 years. So he still gets that $10 million, but it's like $5 million a year. And maybe you make it like $4 million this year, $6 million the year after that. And so you just kind of cut costs in that way. But obviously it's disappointing, and you'd rather they not be reducing payroll coming off a season in which their record was disappointing, and really 6-year span in which only 1 year was their record not disappointing. So coming up in just a minute, more questions and answers, including should the Giants trade Robbie Ray? That would be a definite way to cut some payroll. It would be another answer to this first question. So we'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So I would obviously just go and look for the most lopsided favorable matchup or, bet basically, and place that $5 bet and hope that comes through, and then there's my 150 in bonus bets. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, as promised, more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we are going to be breaking down what the Giants do at this tender deadline, also known as the non-tender deadline, kind of glass half empty or glass half full, tender or non-tender, with the Giants having some interesting decisions, particularly Mike Yastrzemski to me. And there's the possibility of trades, because if you tender a contract to a player, the player gets a bunch of leverage, essentially, because Yazd wouldn't have to agree to a multi-year deal. They could go to arbitration, and he would probably be able to earn close to $10 million if they're unable to come to some agreement prior to arbitration, a hearing, and it would, worst case scenario, go to a hearing where he would probably have an earning power of about $9.5 million. That's what that projection means. And so the Giants wouldn't be able to, well, it's a little more tricky than that. Arbitration salaries are not guaranteed if they go to a hearing. And so that's what happened last year with J.D. Davis. They went to a hearing, and then he ended up getting cut, and they only owed him a prorated portion of his arbitration salary. So it's a little bit complicated, but I don't think that Buster Posey wants to do that. I literally read yesterday him saying that he considers Mike Yastrzemski a friend. So I don't see them trying to do something that is like what happened with J.D. Davis last year. So anyway, tomorrow we'll be breaking that down. And getting to the next question, it's from Aiden, who says, what could the Giants get in return for Robbie Ray? Seems to me clearing his salary would open up a world of flexibility. And I hadn't really thought about it, frankly, Aiden, until your question, which obviously, like I said, I saw it like 2 weeks ago, and we're just getting to it now. But it would open up a world of flexibility because that's $25 million a year for the next 2 years. So I don't think it's some kind of huge albatross, and it's worth keeping in mind. They got Robbie Ray for Mitch Haniger and Anthony DeSclafani. And so DeSclafani missed all of last year with an injury, and Haniger had another bad year with the Mariners. And so, and Haniger also had a player option for this year that he picked up. And so it's not just Robbie Ray at $25 million a year. It's Robbie Ray minus what, the Mariners are paying to Mitch Haniger this season. DeSclafani's contract is up, and Haniger's contract is up after 2025, whereas Robbie Ray has an extra year at $25 million a year. But this guy has the potential to be good. That being said, I understand what you're saying. Like, if they're trying to cut payroll and you're talking $25 million that you could potentially clear, that's intriguing. And so is it something you could see? I think it is. What could you get in return? Probably not all that much, given that it's $25 million a year for a guy coming off Tommy John and a guy who didn't pitch much this season, only made 7 starts. Although in those 7 starts, his strikeout rate was 33.3%, which is very high. And so, I look at the Steamer projections, and they're that of a solid major league pitcher, which he's been his entire career. The projection is actually a 3.98 ERA, which is his career ERA, 3.98. And so with a strikeout rate north of 25%, 25.6 is the Steamer projection for next year. So I think if a team was taking on the entire salary, it's kind of like, I think, a par salary or par contract, 2 years, $50 million for Robbie Ray. It maybe I'm looking at it even with rose-colored or tinted glasses. It could be more of a underwater contract, and so Giants might have to pay down some of it in order to get a team to take it. But say you pay $5 million a year for some team to take it on, so another team, it would be 2 years, $40 million, and they take Robbie Ray off your hands. Would that be worth it to clear money? Maybe use that money to sign a Blake Snell instead, and then would that be a better use of your money? Potentially. And so it's something to think about. I just don't think at the contract that there's some kind of surplus where you would get something big in return, but the return would be clearing the money and then using it on other players that are potentially upgrades. So when the question from Purple Drank, how do you improve your team while also cutting payroll? That's kind of a potential way that you could do it, is what Aiden is suggesting here. So that's just one other thought to consider. Next question comes from Joey, who says, I heard Alex Bregman could be signed for 5 years, $105 million. Sign him and then Walker or Goldie. That's Christian Walker or Paul Goldschmidt, and then a pitcher, period. Please stay away from Soto and Adames. What do you think about that? How realistic? So I'll go in order. First of all, I don't think 5 years, $105 million is realistic. I was ready for this question the last time I did a mailbag, and we just didn't have time to get to it. But the projections from MLB Trade Rumors and ESPN both have Bregman way higher than what you're saying here. MLB Trade Rumors has Alex Bregman earning 7 years, $182 million. ESPN has Bregman at 6 years, $187 million. So that's $31.2 million a year from ESPN, and 182 divided by 7 is $26 million a year. But neither of those is anywhere close to $105 million over 5 years, which is like $20 million a year, right? 105 divided by 5, 21 million a year. So if he was available for that, the thing is, he and his agent, I don't recall if he's a Scott Boras client, but there was a expression of a willingness to play second base. And in some article, it may have been MLB.com, they wrote, some anonymous MLB executive said that they thought that comment was directly pointed at the San Francisco Giants, meaning the comment that he was willing to play second base meant Giants. And maybe, but I think being a little bit more locked on the Giants, they want to sign a shortstop. And so that if you were to get like Ha-Seong Kim and Alex Bregman, I mean, okay. But then what about Tyler Fitzgerald? Super utility, someone who just fills in for guys at second, short, third, outfield. Maybe. So I will get to the rest of this question as well. I just don't think that ultimately that will be the contract. I want to also look at FanGraphs top 50. And so I'm going to actually do that right now just to make sure I don't know where you got that number. So I just want to see if it was FanGraphs. FanGraphs, Ben Clemens does this. He guessed the contract for Bregman would be 5 years, $140 million. So you're saying 5 years, 105. I haven't seen anything like that. And the crowd, they do like crowdsourcing, and the crowd predicted basically 6 years, 162. So nothing anywhere close to $100 million. You just look at Matt Chapman as a comp, and what did Chapman just get from the Giants? And it was 151. And I don't know, Bregman, he had a slow start to the season, but when all was said and done, good defense and about 20% above average, 26 home runs, barely strikes out. And so, this is the kind of player, the Giants and Buster Posey, I think they want to focus more on players who don't strike out. I like Alex Bregman quite a bit as a player. There's obviously, the cheating scandal with the Houston Astros, something to consider. But this guy plays really good defense, career, just looking at his numbers at third base. He's also played some shortstop. Hasn't played since 2019 at short, and has barely played second base in his major league career, just 32 innings and 3.2 innings in the outfield, 3 2/3. So definitely primarily a third baseman, but it's intriguing when you think about adding this guy to your team. But he was another qualifying offer recipient, and we went over last time how significant that is, what the penalties would be, since the Giants were a team that exceeded the luxury tax in 2024. The penalties for signing players who received and rejected the qualifying offer is even stiffer for teams like the Giants who exceeded the luxury tax. Anyway, we'll finish answering this question about the first baseman you mentioned and a pitcher, and get to more questions in just a minute. And before we do, all right, as promised, we're going to get to more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Now, the rest of this question from Joey is, referencing Alex Bregman. I don't think 5.105 is realistic, first of all, like I said. But then the rest of the question says, sign him and then Walker or Goldie and then a pitcher. Please stay away from Soto and Adames. What do you think about that? How realistic? So, again, price, not realistic. Interest in Bregman, possibly realistic. Like when I look at the profile of the player, this is the kind of guy that Buster Posey and the Giants could be talking about when they're talking about the players they value, except maybe there's a character issue that they will consider when it comes to the cheating scandal. Walker and Goldie, Christian Walker or Paul Goldschmidt. Christian Walker, again, was a qualifying offer recipient. I think he makes more sense than like Pete Alonso. But the fact that he received and rejected the qualifying offer, I just only see them at most signing one player who received and rejected the qualifying offer. Paul Goldschmidt, yeah, I mean, you maybe consider that there, especially I wouldn't think so much if Farhan Zaidi was still running the show. It's worth noting Goldschmidt is 37 years old and was just a league average hitter by weighted runs created plus in 2024, and his defense has been on the decline. And so I don't. At first base, he was, according to defensive runs saved, 0 defensive runs saved, and by outs above average, 0 outs above average. So an adequate or exactly average defender according to those metrics, and an exactly average hitter with a 100 weighted runs created plus. So that doesn't make him an average player because first base is a below average. The bar is higher for you to hit basically at first than it is at other positions because the defensive value of first base is lower than it is at other more premium positions. So I'm not super into the idea. He's definitely like a presence, but age is a thing, and he's going to turn 38 in September. And so I don't know. Would you rather have... I don't really see that as the greatest option, but also we don't know how Buster Posey's going to run the show here. But I don't love it. I like Christian Walker more, but the qualifying offer. I like Pete Alonso more, but the qualifying offer and huge long-term deal. Anyway, stay away from Soto and Adames. I'm not staying away from Soto at all. If you have any kind of chance to sign a 26-year-old Juan Soto, I'm all in on that. All in, 100%. I'd give him, whatever it takes, really. If it's market value for Juan Soto at 26 years old, I'd give him 15, 16 years, Bryce Harper got 13 years at age 26. Go ahead, give Juan Soto 15 years. It's not my money. And you're going to get like 6-7 prime years of Juan Soto. Adames, there's an alternative in Ha-Seong Kim, and Kim did not get the qualifying offer. Adames did, so I can see preferring Kim, who's also going to earn less money, and is such a good defender and kind of fits the mold and has a good rapport with Bob Melvin and is good friends with Jung-Hoo Lee. So that makes a lot of sense. But I'm not staying away from Juan Soto under any circumstances. The only reason you would stay away is if you're like, he doesn't want to sign here, let's not waste our time. But if you have any chance, you go through all the due diligence on Juan Soto. You just do. There's just no way you avoid that unless you're just sure that he's not going to sign with you. Anyway, the next question comes from Jake, who says, seeing Corbin Burnes mentioned a lot for a Giants arm. Any traction? So I don't know about traction. There hasn't been any legitimate reporting except maybe about Ha-Seong Kim. There's been kind of names mentioned. Jeff Passan linked the Giants to Max Fried, another qualifying offer recipient, and somebody else. I think Corbin Burnes was another name he mentioned, but he said he would be a good fit for the Giants as opposed to there was any traction. So again, Corbin Burnes, qualifying offer recipient. So there's penalties for signing a player like him. And then again, the penalties get steeper if you sign multiple qualifying offer free agents. And so again, I see them at most signing one, but probably prefer 0. They probably prefer 0. However, Corbin Burnes is the top arm on the market, arguably. You could make a case for Blake Snell, but he's more... Corbin Burnes is more of a volume. You're reliably going to get... I never want to say reliably for a pitcher, but Blake Snell is much less reliable when it comes to health and innings. And Corbin Burnes, and innings in a game. Snell often doesn't go deep into games, whereas Burnes does. And Burnes is a Northern California native, Bakersfield native, and went to school at St. Mary's. So he makes a lot of sense, and it's just going to cost top dollar. And there's those qualifying offer penalties, which are surrendering, I think it would be their second and fifth round draft picks, and losing international bonus pool money, like $1 million of your how much you get, which is like 5 or 6. I can't remember the exact number. So $1 million is a significant portion of that. But, you know, if you have a chance to get a Corbin Burnes, I think you consider it because of how talented he is, although he's had a kind of alarming decline in strikeout rate over the last couple of years. But still was very productive, and the California ties always make it intriguing. But Blake Snell, there's no qualifying offer attached to him, and even if there was, the Giants would have been the team that gave it, so there wouldn't be any penalty for signing him. So I'd possibly prefer Blake Snell because of that qualifying offer thing, and you could probably get him on a shorter term deal. All right, next question comes from Chad Radwell 1212, who says, has Farhan spoken at all since he was let go or made a statement? Not that I know of. I have not heard a peep out of Farhan Zaidi. No idea what he's up to. No statement. You know, he probably, like, in his heart of hearts feels like he got treated kind of poorly by the fan base here. Ultimately, I think criticism was obviously warranted, given that it was just not a great tenure. And there was a lot of talk, even coming from him. We feel like we should be in the playoffs every year. Well, they made the playoffs once. It was a great season, the best season in franchise history in terms of wins. But then just a whole bunch of mediocre baseball, and yeah, some solid players were unearthed, but ultimately not a great tenure. But also people were critical of him before he even had a chance. And I think that was a little bit unfair. And the media, I think he got a lot of heat in the media too that was unfair. And so I don't really blame him for kind of staying quiet, and like thanking the fans and the organization. But at the end of the day, you could kind of just take the high road and say something. But also, maybe he just doesn't want to. I don't know. Or maybe he's out there on the job. I have no idea what he's up to, but so far, nothing. Radio silence. So I wish him and his family, he's got a young child, the best. They live in the Bay Area, but so I don't know if he just kind of leaves baseball, or I believe he would have plenty of opportunities in baseball if he wanted to continue to do that. But so far, haven't heard a thing. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, we're going to wait for the tender deadline to pass to hear what the Giants decide to do with these key players, and that have huge implications about their payroll, which, as we have discussed today, is a big topic because they're planning to reduce it. And so what do they do with a Yaz? Again, I want to throw out the possibility of them working out like a 2-year deal that cuts the money down per year. I think that's a possibility. Yaz even brought it up himself towards the end of the season. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings you a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. Helps me out a lot, so thanks in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.